1, 2, 3, 4.
Hello everyone. I am extremely excited to have with me today Fahd Imtiaz. Fahad is a product manager at Google. And before we delve into your professional career, I'd like to give a very quick intro about your schooling, your education, and then briefly go over your professional career. So Fahad did his schooling from Lahore, Aitchison College. He then moved to Canada and graduated as an electrical engineer from McGill University, and then later on also completed his master's from Canada from University of Waterloo in management sciences. Uske baad initially Fahad started out his career at Blackberry, where he worked as a Bluetooth interoperability specialist. Again, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Then he worked as a product manager at Blackberry. After that, he's worked in senior and leadership positions in the product department at well-known technology companies like TealerFX, PointClickCare, Tulip, Lightspeed, Commerce. And currently, he is working in what I believe to be the greatest technology company in the world right now. And probably one of the most important businesses ever built in humanity's history, right there with Intel and Tesla, Google. So it's in काफी illustrious career. I can just drool over it. So welcome to the podcast, Fahad. How are you?
Abdul, thank you so much for having me here. Thank you so much for inviting me. Doing great. Allah ka shukr. And yeah, just looking forward to the new year now. It's that time of the year, so
Yeah.
pretty exciting.
Before you look forward to the new year, I have been, मैं तो बहुत सारे सवाल. This is I used to tell this to Arthur that the podcast is for the audience, but it's just a way for me to kind of, secretly just ask questions that I want answers to. And
Absolutely.
so I'm pretty psyched. So before I start with anything, I have to ask कि ये interoperability specialist क्या होते हैं जिससे मुझसे pronounce भी नहीं हो रहा सही तरीके से. So
Okay. Cool. I don't think I've gotten this question before. Like, Abdul, think of it as maybe a cool way of saying QA engineer. But anyways, I mean, jokes apart, right? As you might know, Bluetooth it's basically a wireless technology standard,
Yeah.
and like any standard, जिसका specification होता है, anyone who's implementing that standard interprets the standard in their own way. Now, when two devices who have implemented the same standard want to work together, that's basically what's called interoperability. So basically my role as that Bluetooth interoperability specialist at Blackberry involved making sure Blackberry could work well with pretty much anything in the world that supported Bluetooth. And उस time पे back in 2010, 2011, उस time पे यहाँ पे cars में Bluetooth जो है, it suddenly was evolving quite a bit. So that was a very big focus of the role, making sure that you can pair your BlackBerry smartphone with the fanciest car that you're buying. And is tarah mein, I got a chance to even drive a lot of Audis and Mercedes as well. Just making sure I'm doing that compatibility testing.
Of course. Compatibility testing के नाम पे. I was just about to say that you probably got access to all BlackBerry models, which right now people probably don't know, but BlackBerry used to be the phone at one point in time, right? It used to be called the sex symbol of phones. So
yeah, depending on how old you are, basically, then yes, you remember. Yeah.
Yeah, depending on how old you are. But we'll go into your BlackBerry experience in a bit. But let's go back to your roots. So you started. I'm not going to go way back into roots, but talking about your college experience. So you studied from Aitchison, right? And the reason why I brought this question up was that there is a perception of Aitchison everywhere in the world. Wherever there is the term Pakistan, मतलब जो पाकिस्तान को जानता है, Aitchisonians या Aitchison का भी नाम वहाँ पे जाना जाता है. So when I was at LUMS, and even before coming or starting my semester, there were certain stereotypes which were formed of different groups. So, for example, if you're from JT, if you're a JT ka boy, you're a JT ka londa, as they would call it. there were certain kind of traits that were associated with you. If you're from KGS, there were certain traits that were associated with you, and if you're from Aitchison, that there were certain traits that were associated with you. So, like for example, it was said that you guys kind of operate in groups, and bit more reserved, a bit pompous, but I didn't find them to be true. Like as is with most stereotypes, they're very simplistic, and overgeneralistic. So I didn't find them to be true. I made some good friends and acquaintances from people who were from Aitchison. So how was your experience, as an Aitchisonian?
हैवी
बहुत
क्वेश्चन
पुरानी
वैसे
यादें दिला
अब
दे, बहुत
पुरानी
पुराने।
बहुत 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 ज़्यादा पुरानी like what 25 years ago or actually more than 25. Anyways, Abdul, you talked about stereotypes, right? I think if we look at where the world is today, right, जितनी advancements हो गई हैं, I don't think these stereotypes matter at all now,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
I consider stereotypes, they are the biggest enemy of equality, and
yeah,
as unfortunate as that it is, they still exist. But
yeah,
I think at the end of the day, what really matters is who you are as a person. Right, your schooling, yes, definitely plays a role in that. But at the end of the day, what really defines you is who you are as a person, not necessarily आप किस स्कूल में गए थे, आप कहाँ पे काम करते हैं, आप कहाँ पे रहते हैं. And I think that is the most important thing at the end of the day, which in my opinion is most important for you to be successful in the world. So yeah, आपकी बात बिल्कुल सही है कि ये लेबल्स लगे हुए हैं, एचिसोनियंस ऐसे होते हैं और एलजीएस के लोग ऐसे होते हैं, केजीएस के ऐसे होते हैं. But I think at the end of the day, there comes a time when these things they stop mattering at all.
yeah.
So that's basically I think what I would say about the stereotypes part. But like you said, I think आपने मेरी काफी यादें एकदम से जो हैं वो ताज़ा की हैं by talking about Aitchison. And funny enough, I still very vividly, remember the day जिस दिन मेरा admission test था for Aitchison, the day I found out I got into Aitchison, all the way to the point where I actually even graduated. And I think one thing that I found that, Aitchison helped me do was it really helped groom me to be the person that I am today, right? Be it in the form of the friends that I made at Aitchison, or be it basically in the form of the education that I received over there. So I think if I think about that, essentially that was Aitchison definitely is a very big highlight for me in my life. I think one thing from Aitchison that has really stuck by me, school का motto है perseverance commands success, and I think it has really stuck by me in the sense, जब भी अभी भी कोई challenge आता है at work or in the personal life as well, that whole concept of perseverance is really important. And I still think about it, and it's a mushkil situation where that thing still comes to me. So, but yeah, glad. I mean, Aitchison definitely helped provide that base for me. Just the basis where I was able to, get into McGill, Allah ka shukr, and yeah, back in the day, I was able to actually then come to Canada as well.
Yeah, that's great. Great answer. I was hoping to get some tea, but unfortunately that didn't happen. But there are conversations that happen beyond the podcast, so I can get my fair share of tea then. मुझे उससे
Sounds
याद
good.
है when you mentioned your motto, I probably don't remember any like Latin के कोई phrase नहीं, but क्योंकि Aitchisonian is a very old college, and so I also graduated from St. Patrick's. I don't know if you know about that.
I do.
And so that's also a very old college, and our motto was per aspera ad astra, which is through hardships to the stars. तो मुझे बस इतनी ही लैटिन का याद है, और उसके बाद ना कभी like for example, I've always been interested in languages, so उससे मुझे बस ये थोड़ा सा याद आ गया. Anyways, moving forward. I'd love to dive into your experience at Blackberry, right? Since that was the start of your product career. So you did your training, your formal training was as an engineer, and not even a software engineer. So उसके बाद what made you go into product, right? एक तो पहला सवाल ये. And then the second question, as an extension to this, is how was it working in the product management department for a hardware company, right? If you were working in in the hardware team or not, but primarily product to hardware था ना BlackBerry का, क्योंकि a lot of people have this misconception that product managers जो हैं वो खाली software companies में होते हैं, which is not at all true. So
Right.
I'd love for you to talk about that.
No, for sure. I think, like you mentioned, basically my first job out of the school, BlackBerry में थी, and I was a QA, or that fancy title, interoperability specialist. So I did that for 4 years, right? And during those 4 years, I basically realized that, यार अपनी desk पे बैठ के logs सारा time देखते रहना and finding issues in our implementation of Bluetooth, and just learning more about the new Bluetooth standards, it just stopped exciting me at some point, right? And so I reflected basically in Charles Solomon, what was that one thing that really excited me? And I realized that the thing that I really enjoyed was जब भी कोई customer कोई issue report करता है, right, that their phone isn't working well in their car, being able to solve that and basically getting the satisfaction they had made the customer happy, that used to really excite me. So based on this, I was very fortunate to have a great mentor at BlackBerry who essentially then guided me towards product management. So he saw शायद कोई potential देखा था उसने, and he was able to guide me towards product management, and that's where basically I even did my master's as well. At that time, I was like, okay, मैंने engineering कर लिया, let me try to do something on the technology management side. So I did that, and Allah ka shukr, I was very fortunate. I was very lucky to essentially then land a role as a product manager at BlackBerry, and I was responsible for all of the connectivity technologies on your BlackBerry device, which was like Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, USB, NFC. So, but I was the PM on the software side. So to
Yeah.
answer your question, yes, there was definitely a hardware aspect. लेकिन आपको पता है आजकल without software, what is hardware, right?
Yeah.
Hardware is, yes, the feel of the device that you're holding, how well it is built, uh, the camera quality. Yes, that really makes a big difference. But then at the end of the day, you're essentially interacting with the operating system. An operating system, as you know, it's all software. So
Yeah.
there was definitely a very big software team at BlackBerry, but in parallel, there was also a very big hardware team. And I think basically when I became the PM over there, that's where I realized that आपको सॉफ्टवेयर और हार्डवेयर को इन सिंक रख के how you have to plan features, that was something that I learned over there, क्योंकि जो हार्डवेयर साइड का product life cycle होता है, that's usually much longer than software, right? Typically they plan things for 2 to 3 years down the road. वो आज decisions ले रहे हैं. Software can be built maybe 6 to 8 months before shipping, as an example. So that was one key learning, I would say, working in a hardware company, which was, like you said, primarily hardware, but had a software component as well. But at the same time, I do want to say that, hardware product management is absolutely a thing today. So a lot of companies do hire hardware product managers who are responsible for the hardware portfolio. So to say that the product managers are software side person, I don't think that's true anymore.
Yeah, and I think like for example, like just like your experience in kind of working primarily like आज तो जैसे for example, if I'm building a SaaS software, I don't think, or for example, people don't think about the limitations of okay कि यार अच्छा ये डिवाइस पे इसकी क्या compatibility होगी, क्या चलेगा क्या नहीं चलेगा, क्योंकि अब native तो सॉफ्टवेयर आप बनाने से रहे, आप सारी चीजें you build everything, almost everything for the web.
That's
So
right.
that's a unique experience, right? And so like I would love to dive deeper into it. And actually, मेरा जो next सवाल है वो थोड़ा इसी like you touched upon it briefly that um, BlackBerry had a big software team. क्योंकि if I'm remembering correctly, and please point me if I'm not, that you guys had your own operating system. It wasn't built on Android, and that was actually one of the reasons why later on, because you guys were trying to build your own ecosystem and your own applications, और क्योंकि वो वहाँ पे developer community इतनी बड़ी नहीं थी, तो amongst other reasons that was one of the reasons for the decline of it. So, but that's not my question. My question is, my question is a bit more like it's going to be a bit more stingy, in the sense that I remember in all my intro, my intro to marketing classes mein, so there were certain examples and tales of many brands which didn't adapt with time and failed, right? आप start होते थे from soft photo. I remember photocopier machine, and then वो एक camera था. I'm forgetting the Kodak, right? Yeah,
Right.
it was Kodak, right? And so there were different case studies of brands that didn't adapt with time and were eventually overtaken by industries and companies that were very innovative in nature. So उसमें black in the technology and specifically in the smartphone industry, examples are given for the likes of Nokia, Sony Ericsson, and Blackberry, right? Just to quote some numbers here, at one time Blackberry controlled 43% of the smartphone market and in the US, and then 20% globally, right? So that's incredible numbers. So when you were working on that team, right? So while you were working on that team, was there this kind of in your later years, right, in early 2010s and like in 2013, 2014, 2015, was there this feeling or this understanding in the team that you're part of a sinking ship, that you're right now being out innovated, and then were there efforts made to pivot, like to catch up at the pace with which Android was growing? And so how did that shape you, and what lessons did you learn from that? So मैंने 3 सवाल पूछ लिए, थोड़ा context ज़्यादा lay out कर दिया, but basically ये कि like while you were working there, was there this sense of being part of a sinking ship? What efforts were made to kind of revert it? And then lastly, like what are your biggest learnings from that experience?
Excellent question. I think learnings are definitely काफी ज़्यादा हैं. But yeah, so first I'd like to say that case study, it's very interesting to hear that a company that you used to work for is now basically a case study for business school students, and likely will be for years to come. So
Yeah.
that's something that's pretty interesting. So नहीं यार, you're absolutely right, Abdul. Basically, BlackBerry's decline kind of was initiated with the introduction of iPhone when iPhone was launched in 2007. And as you might recall, the unique thing about iPhone was it was a touchscreen device and it was able to run third-party apps. And that was something that BlackBerry did not have at that time. Like you said, what developer community nahi thi. So BlackBerry's answer to basically iPhone at that point was the introduction of BlackBerry 10, which was another self or homegrown operating system. जो BlackBerry ने बनाया था, it was QNX based. And the idea was, okay, this is what BlackBerry is going to use now to compete against Android and iOS. But so the talking about the developer community, right? एक नया brand new OS बना दिया जिसपे अभी कोई apps नहीं है, and a new OS without any apps. Think of it as a fisherman जो बैठा हुआ है मछली पकड़ने के लिए, लेकिन आगे उसका बेट नहीं, कुछ भी नहीं लगा हुआ, तो मछली कैसे आएगी? So it's the infamous chicken and egg situation, right? Users wanted apps, and app developers didn't want to build an app until they were users on BlackBerry 10. So eventually, then BlackBerry did scrap BlackBerry 10 and then move to Android. But it was kind of around the time that I left. But based on what I have seen, I don't think BlackBerry के जो Android phones थे, they weren't also hugely successful. So that's basically what the trajectory was for BlackBerry in a nutshell. But I think if I think about some of the learnings, right, the one thing that comes to mind is BlackBerry, as you may recall, was very big on the physical keyboard, right?
Yeah.
So the BlackBerry the users used to love the typing on a physical keyboard. then by the iPhone आया, Apple did some pretty amazing things with a virtual keyboard. And as a result, users, suddenly got used to this idea of a virtual keyboard that is presented on the screen and it's not taking up so much real estate on your device. So basically, BlackBerry continued with this train of thought. Users still want that physical keyboard. And I think one of the key lessons that I learned from myself from this was, products need to evolve with the users. So users, their needs sometimes evolve and sometimes the products don't evolve with that. It's very important to always keep the needs of the users in front of you instead of, just continuing with the assumption that you have कि जो यूजर्स को 5 साल पहले पसंद था वो अभी भी पसंद होगा या there will be a certain niche जिसको अभी भी पसंद होगा so we should just continue down this road. So I think that was a very big lesson that has still stuck by me. I think the other one I would say is कोई भी industry ले लो and no matter how big of a market share do you have, right? It's extremely important to never stop innovating.
Yeah.
आप आज भी देखो Android and iOS, they are basically dominating the smartphone industry. But you see them continuously innovating, right? On the software side, on the hardware side, you need to keep the users excited about what's next, right? So, and you shouldn't just only be evolving the products, but also essentially, any complementary services that you provide along with the product, and continue to explore like unique market opportunities. जो अभी आपने tap नहीं की. So there's so much that you can do and continue to do. You can't just sit back and say, okay, you know what, we are the kings of this market and we are untouchable. That does not last. So that was another lesson. Like never ever think that
You can't be out
आप
innovated.
irreplaceable हो. Yes, yeah.
I was funny enough, पता नहीं शायद 2-3 दिन पहले I came across this LinkedIn post by Harry Stebbings, वो जो 20VC का podcast का host or founder of the fund, and he said that I've realized before I head into any meeting, I'm just not quoting word to word मुझे जो whatever I can recall from the post, but he said somewhere along something along the lines of that I judge startups or I look at industries from this lens now. Okay, how capable is if the startup can out distribute if the startup can out distribute the incumbent, so then that means that that startup is bound to succeed. And if the incumbent can out innovate the startup, then that incumbent will maintain its superiority, right? So you're right, exactly in that case. Okay, this is a classic case of where, आपको जो feedback loop मिल रहा था because and the reason why BlackBerry was wanted to still bank on the physical keyboard because वो जो उसके fans थे, I still remember it was a cult.
Right.
There was I'm saying it was a sex symbol for a reason because it was a cult. Because if you had that physical keyboard, it was it was a status symbol.
For sure.
And it thought that it didn't realize that there was a growing market for people that did not care so much about the physical keyboard and more about some of the things like you mentioned, real estate, more applications, being connected, having a phone that other people also have so that here I can communicate with them, right? BlackBerry पे मैं iMessage भेजूं, BlackBerry का message का कोई I forgot if it
BBM.
BBM भेजूं yeah, and if someone has an
that
iPhone,
was another status symbol thing, right?
Yeah, exactly, right? Okay, so हम BlackBerry पे पूरी रात बात कर सकते हैं, so I'm gonna now jump forward. So I want to talk about your recent role at Lightspeed HQ, right? We'll get to Google in a bit. Don't worry, I still have you for some time. But I want to talk about Lightspeed HQ. Because this was the first place where you're part of the leadership team, right? Product leadership team specifically. So I'd like for you to draw some parallels about working as a product manager, right? Versus in a more leadership role, where you probably have less of an operational responsibility, but more responsibility along, of building a roadmap, right, that aligns with the strategy of the company and the goals and OKRs of the company. And that involves more the more human element of a product manager's role, right, where they have to speak with the team, where they have to communicate more, rather than just of more of an operational role. So off to you.
Yeah, sure. So I think Abdul Peribati, I joined Lightspeed as a senior PM. That
Sorry,
definitely wasn't part of.
one more thing. I'd
Yes,
love for you to also, like, very briefly for people, talk about what Lightspeed HQ is.
yeah, sure. So Lightspeed basically provides commerce solutions like a point of sale and an e-commerce solution for small and medium businesses specifically. And in target verticals, retail, hospitality, and golf. So basically, these were the three key verticals. I was part of the retail team at Lightspeed. So retail team was a small business retailer who wants to sell in their stores. They would use a point of sale that is built by Lightspeed. Or if they want to sell online, then they would use the e-commerce platform that Lightspeed built, basically. So yes, like I was saying, Abdul, I joined Lightspeed as a senior PM, but was pretty fortunate to be promoted to a group PM within 6 months. I think my manager saw maybe something in me. So I think as a group PM, I suddenly became responsible for a suite of products rather than eight to individual products, and also had one PM who was reporting to me. So we were a very big team of two PMs. Uh,
Hmm.
but yeah, essentially, how working as a group PM was different than working as an individual contributor. I think there are some parallels that can be drawn. So typically, when you work as a PM, one of the goals that at least I always have is यार engineering team को हर वक्त unblocked रखना है. Like do whatever you can to make sure they
Yeah.
are not blocked on making
Yeah.
progress. And I think funny enough, as a group PM, essentially what you're trying to do is that, the PMs on your team are essentially unblocked to move forward on a certain project. Like there's alignment at the management level, there's alignment with, let's say, some of the go-to-market teams. So we can just move forward and start building what we have to. So that unblocking aspect, I think that's one parallel that I can drive. I think another key one is the prioritization aspect, right? So obviously, as PMs, prioritization is really bread and butter for any PM. So even
Hmm.
as a group PM, you're supposed to make the same prioritization calls, but now across a suite of products. So वो जो मेरा experience था being able to prioritize effectively as a PM, that was very much relevant as well. Like किस particular product पे resources allocate होने चाहिए, which team should be working on what's more important, and how does that contribute towards the goals that we have for the year. So I think making those decisions definitely felt pretty easy. But funny enough, I'll share with you. So even though I was a group PM, I still continued to work as an individual contributor as well at Lightspeed. So I did not stop working on the product that I was working on, and I still was the day-to-day PM on that as well. And I think my biggest motivation was I did not want to lose touch of what it means to be on the field every day.
Hmm.
So, like you
Oh.
said, कि वो operational uh, say up, hard jate, you step back. So I just did not want to lose touch with that. Maybe because I enjoy doing that so much.
And it kind of, like, being on the I wouldn't really know, मैंने कोई leadership role तो नहीं लिया as such अभी तक, but when you're operationally there, you have such a, you can at times sure lose sight of the forest for the trees, but you have such a deeper understanding of the product itself, क्योंकि you're interacting with so many elements in a very deep way and for a very
Right.
prolonged period of time. So that really gives you like that really makes you appreciate, some of the subtleties and the improvements that you make and how that ends up impacting the user experience. So yeah,
Totally.
absolutely. I'll
Yeah, वो जो satisfaction होती है ना वो that you get when you're working as a PM directly on a product. Yes,
Yeah.
there is the management aspect as well. I think with the satisfaction, I think everyone can attest to the fact वो तभी मिलती है when you get great reviews from your users at the end of the
Yeah.
day.
Yeah. Yeah. So now, on to Google. The
Yep.
one and I have a lot of questions for you here as well. So you're now currently working as a product manager at Google, right? And more specifically, you're working on Android runtime on ChromeOS. So before
Mhm.
we talk about your responsibilities, I would like to touch upon your process of getting into Google, right? Uh, there are books, YouTube channels, blogs, websites, startups, even now, and small companies that help aspirants get into Google in technology roles. Khali product management, nahi, software engineering. Bhi.
Mhm.
Um, so how what did your process look like, right? And what are some pieces of advice that you would give to someone like me, when they one day when they dream of applying to Google?
Yeah, so Abdul, I wish I had a penny for every time everyone asks
Someone
me
asked you,
this question. But I think
you'd
in
be a
reality
millionaire.
there is no way of I think yeah, billionaire for sure. Ban jata shayad. Uh, I think, but the reality is, honestly, there is no one size fits all approach to basically get into like FANG companies, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Google. I think at the end of the day, what matters is, it's a combination of how much exposure do you have as a PM in the field. आपने कितने साल काम किया, आपने किस तरह के products पे काम किया, किस तरह की industries में काम किया, and how much has that exposed you into the nitty-gritties of product management. And I think उसके अलावा basically preparing for the interview is very, very important as well.
Yeah.
It's I don't think मैंने अपने किसी एग्जाम के लिए शायद इतना पढ़ा हो जितना मैंने गूगल के
Mhm.
इंटरव्यूज के लिए तैयारी की थी. I think I allocated 4 to 5 weeks to prepare for the interview. जिसमें I'll share I read this book called Cracking the PM Interview.
Yeah.
It was written by someone who used to work at Google, and they had shared like a lot of great insights into how you should approach the questions. And I mean, just needless to say, जरूरी नहीं जो मेरी जर्नी है like और जो मेरा प्रोसेस था वो हर किसी के लिए काम करे. Maybe people are much smarter and उनको ये शायद बुक भी पढ़ने की जरूरत ना हो and they can get in. But that's what I did. I essentially went through that book twice, and उसके बाद I used this online resource. It's called Exponent. And
Yeah.
Exponent पे there are a ton of great questions which I just practiced like crazy for 3 weeks. Uh, खुद से, basically question देखा, I would write the answer, I would speak it, I would record myself, and then essentially see how I did that. I think another key thing that helps is doing mock interviews, especially when you're trying to interview for a company like Google. Uh, you get good feedback in terms of how you approach the question. But I think एक चीज मैं advise करूंगा, and a lot of people make this mistake. They tend to do the mock interviews just maybe 2 or 3 days before their actual interview. And I've seen so many people जिनको mock interview का feedback has completely thrown them off in the actual interview. So I think
Mm.
one thing I would say is if you want to do the mock interviews, maybe do them like 2 to 3 weeks in advance of your actual interview. Uh, I think outside of that, once you actually get to the interview process, one thing that I again learned from this book, which is Cracking the PM Interview, is how do you end up structuring the answer? Basically, जब आप interview में हो, I mean, it needs to be extremely methodical and logical. And I think another key thing to keep in mind is, आपको these questions are infamously challenging. आपको एकदम से on the spot you're supposed to think about this really amazing answer and give that. And for you to be able to get to that position, right, you have to be in a certain mindset.
Yeah.
That mindset is extremely important, and that mindset comes with a lot of preparation. Okay, certainly if you get an answer, you can quickly think about 4 to 5 things like competition. You can think about any external pressures, legal, pressures, इस तरह की चीजें सोच के you are able to figure out what the strategy is. But like I said, that typically comes with practice. So that's one. I think the second thing I was going to say was जहाँ पे answer structure होता है, right? It's very important to basically take a step back before you answer a question and really question like जो ये पूछ रहा है, like what are the goals and objectives related to the question that they are asking? Who are the users? What are their pain points? And it's always very important to round up your answer with success metrics as well. So काफी दफा अभी भी जब मैं देखता हूँ a lot of people the mistakes that they make is उनसे कुछ पूछो how would you improve this and they suddenly jump into the solution without thinking कौन users हैं किस तरह की उनका usage कैसा है उनके usage में gaps क्या हैं so that's essentially one thing definitely I would say should keep in mind. I think other than that, a huge part is luck as well. I think Google is famous कि जी उनका acceptance rate is 0.2%, which is much lower than Harvard. So apparently it's easier to get into Harvard than it is to get into Google. I think one thing I would say is absolutely anyone can get in there with the right preparation, with the right mindset. You absolutely can. And just keep in mind if you don't get in the first time, just don't lose hope, and you can always try again to get into
Yeah,
Google.
I know a couple of people who didn't get in the first time and then eventually did. May I say, sorry, I have one small kind of question
Yeah.
to thank you for kind of elaborating on that answer. It's super helpful. Can it be hacked? So, for example, now you have these books, you have these Exponent is a great website to get example questions, and people start to extract a certain pattern from these questions, and then maybe over time they just get really good at doing the interview, which in itself is a feat, right? But then when it comes to doing the day-to-day actual job, they realize that then they don't have the chops for it. And I've heard stories about this. Like, for example, it's not just Google, but other FAANG companies too. So, like, ऐसा होता है? Like, what is your opinion on it?
I think अगर होता है तो someone has to be extremely smart to be able to do something like this because I
And
think one thing that
dedicated
I
to,
shared, yeah, और अगर आप इतने smart हो then maybe you are already smart enough to get into Google. आप तैयारी करके आप कर लो. लेकिन Abdul, like you said, I think the most important thing is that mindset. So
yeah.
yes, you can practice many questions. You can basically try to memorize the framework. Ratta लगा लो, as we basically say. लेकिन that ratta basically breaks very easily in the interview. The moment the interviewer will ask any follow-up questions, you will need to think on the spot. And अगर आपको जरा सा वो आपको framework से हट के question पूछेगा, that's it. You're done over there. So
Yeah.
I don't think it can be hacked. I don't think it should be hacked in the first place. I think with the right amount of preparation, I think you can basically do it.
I am so certain that there are probably centers in India that are dedicated to helping you crack interviews. Like, for example, there's SATs and uske hote hain, GMAT ke. Anyways, so that's a
Um,
very good segue. Sorry,
no,
go ahead.
I'm sure honge. I'm sure there are people who believe that these things can be hacked, but like you said, सही आप interview clear करके आप आगे चले जाओगे, but there are so many layers of approvals that you have to go through. I mean, आप एक वो framework याद रखें, I don't think you can really make it through.
True, true. So that's a kind of, an advice to everyone out there that's listening and is interested. You will have to work very, very hard, even at hacking it. So now, so I'd like to. That's a very good segue to my next question and to our next topic that we to discuss, which is what does it mean to be a product manager at Google, right? What is the product culture there, or how does your day to day look like?
Excellent question. So Abdul, I think Google में अब I think साल से थोड़ा सा ऊपर हो गया, and I think over this period of time I've really enjoyed the culture जो यहाँ पे है, just generally company culture as well as the product culture. And you may have heard जो Google के employees, and they use this term called googly, which
Hmm.
is basically how well do you fit in within the culture, right?
Yeah.
Or so googliness define होती है, right? There isn't this one definition that says that googliness means this, but at the end of the day, basically some of the traits that you see are, things like people are extremely collaborative, people are extremely nice to each other, they're always respecting each other, always having the utmost respect for the user at the end of the day, and challenging the status quo, and basically, and in my opinion, most importantly, inclusiveness for everyone. That's basically a significant part of the culture. And ये company culture की चीजें जो हैं, they actually are basically carried forward to the product culture as well, right? So whether if you're working within your own team within Google, or if you are working across a certain product area, you will find that PMs generally at Google, they are extremely open-minded, extremely collaborative, and there is that very strong push for inclusivity as well. Inclusivity not just for okay, we should be building for all types of users, but हर किसी का opinion is important, and we need to hear them out, and sometimes people will have some amazing ideas to share. So I think that's one thing that has really stood out for me abhi tak, in terms of the product culture, that I would say generally. So you asked me what my day to day is like. I think funny enough, like any other company जहाँ पे मैंने काम किया है, कोई भी दिन एक जैसा नहीं होता, right? Every day is unique. Every day just brings forth a different set of challenges. And yeah, I think there are days when, I wear the firefighter hat. So there are fires that you're trying to put out. And then there are days when I'm trying to scramble, and you put in some updates to provide to management. And then there are maybe certain days when you're in your core product mode, right? जब आप you're sitting in a room with engineers, really trying to figure out the solution to a problem that you have brought forward. So basically, I think it's a combination of all of that in terms of day to day. And I think just generally, the expectation is KPMs at Google, they are expected to be a lot more or focus a lot more on the strategic aspect of the product and less so on the execution. Not to say execution is not important. I mean, without execution, आपका product ही नहीं बनेगा. But basically, you need to focus on uncovering what are the most important problems for us to solve, and what are some creative ways on how we can go ahead and solve them as well. And I think जहाँ पे execution की बात आती है, वहाँ पे engineering really helps out. Typically, जहाँ पे कुछ companies में मैंने काम किया है, वहाँ पे product owners or product managers, they typically manage the product backlog for the team, and all. I think these are things that I haven't seen yet at Google. मैंने कभी अभी तक की नहीं है. It's
Hmm.
basically engineering that takes care of a lot of those things. So that allows me to focus more so around, okay, what's next? What is it that we need to address next?
Sounds extremely exciting, and inside view, folks, you got it first here. So
For sure.
uh, मेरा इस पे एक follow up ये है कि what do you think, what are certain traits of good or great product managers, right? Because I know a lot of it is about is adapting to specific cultures at different companies, right? And then even within different companies depend करता है कि आप किस तरह के किस stage of the company में काम कर रहे हो, किस company में काम कर रहे हो, किस ecosystem में काम कर रहे हो, किस country में काम कर रहे हो, so बहुत variables हैं. But some general guiding first principle for great product managers, and how do you how do you identify them, how do you work on them, how do you build those up?
That's an excellent question, Abdul. I think Like you said, I think PMs, what defines a good PM in a certain company is really going to vary based on आप जिस company, जिस industry, जिस country में आप काम कर रहे हो. Uh, I think if I think back, there are a few traits that I would say I've seen consistently across some of the rock star product managers that I've come across. And I think the first one that I've seen is they are always hungry for more.
Mm.
Basically, they're never satisfied. And hungry isn't, खाने के लिए नहीं. It's always about the information, right? I've seen these PMs. I mean, the way they behave, it's as if they never know enough about the users. They never know enough about the market. They never know enough about the competition. And so basically these PMs, जो ये amazing PMs हैं, I've seen that they never stop learning, right? So they are, whether if they're learning related to anything to their product or just generally, polishing their skills, they're just continuously in that cycle of learning and upskilling themselves. So I think that's one. And this usually comes with, eventually आप अपने अंदर जब एक वो curiosity develop करते हो, right, to make sure that you are trying to solve the most important things for your users. I think this uh, curiosity comes with that. Okay, I don't know enough. Maybe there's something else that I can solve. And I think that's where I would encourage people to basically take a step back. If you're working on something, like really try to understand, okay, am I really building the right thing? Like, am I really focused on the right priorities? Am I really focused on the right type of users? So just continuously challenge yourself, continuously challenge some of the decisions that you're making, and essentially then this is a habit that you build over a certain period of time. So there isn't a magical way, there is no magical wand जिससे एकदम
Oh
से आपके
no.
अंदर ये hunger develop हो जाती है, but I've seen many people develop this over a period of a few years. So I think that's one, Abdul. Second that comes to my mind is I think this is probably one of the most important ones. I should have said it maybe before, but I think these amazing PMs, जो भी होते हैं, great PMs, they're also great communicators, right?
Yes.
At the end of the day, their communication skills are just amazing. And what makes them really amazing is when they communicate something, they're very precise in their answers or in what they are saying, but at the same time very convincing as well. So छोटे से answer में they'll basically convey अपना जो point है, and they'll do it in a very very convincing way.
Yeah.
And another key aspect of this communication part is they can vary the amount of detail that they're sharing based on their target audience, right? So जब आप senior management को present कर रहे हो, तो they can easily go to that 30,000 foot view and उधर बात करोगे, but then essentially when you're talking to engineering, they don't hesitate to go into the weeds as well. So I think at the end of the day, all of this kind of rolls into communication skills. And I think very much related to that is actually I did a training last year जिससे मुझे एकदम से ये चीज दिमाग में आई, which is the art of storytelling as well. So I think the art of storytelling is extremely important for product managers. And I think if we all think back, बचपन में we all used to love listening to stories. And truth
Yeah.
be told, वो अभी भी वो reality वही है. We all love listening to stories. So I think the way how you communicate a certain idea and how you essentially use your words to create certain imaginations and experiences in the mind of your audience. I think that art is basically, in my opinion, what storytelling is, and that's basically a very, very, I would say, important skill if you really want to succeed as a PM. Uh, I think I can go on and on about this actually, Abdul, but I'll just maybe share one more, right? And that
Please do
lastly
go
is
on and on. No one's stopping you. Go ahead. that
No,
yeah.
I think that वो फिर सारे traits आ जाएंगे ना. You asked me of a few things that distinguish these really amazing
Yeah,
PMs, but I think if I think about it a bit more, I think one thing I've seen is these amazing PMs, they thrive in ambiguity, right? So
yeah,
जहाँ पे भी ambiguous situations आती हैं, जहाँ पे vagueness होती है, clarity नहीं होती, it is these PMs who essentially try to basically de- uh, derive what needs to be done, right? They try to get the clarity and essentially then pass it on to all of the stakeholders as well. And they are the ones who are basically very comfortable being in that position जहाँ पे चीजें aren't making
chaos.
100% sense, but there are chaos है, but you're trying to figure out like what needs to be done, and you do it very calmly, and that's basically, I think, another amazing skill to have as a PM. Because let's be
Yeah.
honest, everyone does face this situation as a product manager.
Yeah, especially when working in an early stage startup, if you can make sense and get direction from chaos, that's probably one of the strongest skills that at least I have seen in my experience working with good product managers to have possessed.
Right.
Um,
And ये चीज होती है, it just comes with experience, in my opinion, right? There is no shortcut to it. There is no, again, no magical wand over here as well. This is something that you will learn as you make mistakes. And it's okay to make mistakes early on, right? आप उन mistakes, as long as you're learning lessons and then basically growing yourself, that's at the end of the day what matters. And everyone does that, and essentially everyone does get to this level of comfort of being able to deal with ambiguity.
Perfect. That's that. Thank you so much. That was super, super helpful. I'm probably saying this for the third time today, but it is what it is. Acha, I would like to maybe now shift a bit to current events. So, we know that it seems like there is a very long winter ahead of us. The era of free interest rate is over. And endless VC money, like for example, wo jo ek, there these headlines that VC money has dried up, which is actually not true because I was reading this article or this not right now, but a few weeks ago, where there is so much of money right now that is in VCs that needs to be deployed because that capital needs to be deployed because the VC model is such that you can't store it, राइट इतनी जितना आपका ज़्यादा वो जो एक होता है आउटपुट रेट होता है उसके बाद वो refresh rate, I'm forgetting the terminology for it, but turnover, right? So how
Mhm.
it's because the sooner you get rid or not rid, that's not the right way to phrase it, but the sooner you deploy capital, the quicker, the earlier you raise another round, and your incentives are aligned there, right? So जिस तरह Charlie Munger's quote, show me the incentive, I'll tell you the outcome. So it's in their incentive to deploy capital. So it's not like it's dried up, but everyone is extremely wary right now because you know that you now are being held accountable to business fundamentals, to strong business principles, and you can't just, like for example, you can't just, it's not the, like the shorter, I would say, not the shorter, but an alternative .com era has also ended. Alternative .com era मैं इसलिए बोलता हूँ क्योंकि जब initial .com era था तो वो internet startups they got bursted, and जो anyone that could basically have a website and could pitch their company or their startup as an internet startup would get funding. यहाँ पे पिछले कुछ सालों में that was true for crypto and for Web3 and for blockchain startups, even though people didn't really know okay, what is the underlying product. Okay, I don't want to talk about that, or maybe if you do have any, if you have any opinions about that, I'd love to know. मुझे जिस बारे में बात करनी है वो ये कि in this time we have seen कि एक तो ये कि बहुत सारे layoffs हो रहे हैं startups में. Startups have been hit the most with this, right? Technology companies have been hit the most with the recent with the recent kind of inflationary cycle that's on us. So in this time, जहाँ पर आपके पास big tech companies में भी layoffs हो रहे हैं, Meta just laid off 11,000 employees. Amazon is planning to lay off 10,000 and more employees.
I think they
There are
did
rumors that
already.
No, they did already, and there are rumors that Google might as well. In this very kind of depressing landscape, how do you how do how what does a product manager, or what does a product manager aspirant do to seek jobs? And in case, like, एक बात तो है ना कि there is a diminishing supply for jobs right now in the market. How
For
do they
sure.
prepare themselves right now, right? मतलब as in, what do they upskill themselves on, so that eventually, when the fates turn, there are certain they will be better for it, because they would have upskilled themselves on in certain areas which will make them stand out. So two questions, and so one, your opinion on the entire, the long the 2 year or 3 year party that just ended. Two, how do product aspirants find job in this market? And three, how do they prepare or upskill themselves, so that when the economy does go, turn over to the greener side, they are able to stand out?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much for the question, Abdul. Yes, like you said, very heavily loaded question over here. I think if I think about it, there's definitely a very big sense of doubt, basically hanging over everyone who is in tech right now, right? Nobody really knows अगले साल क्या होना है. Obviously, this year was pretty bad for tech, and things don't seem to be improving really as we look at the current state of affairs. Uh, I think my advice in terms of how maybe product aspirants can stay relevant, I guess basically, yeah, staying relevant definitely is a very big part. What do we mean by relevance, actually? Let me maybe try to explain that first. So I think if we look back 2 to 3 years ago to when COVID-19 started, right, suddenly there was a huge spike in internet activity. हर कोई घर पे बैठा था, everyone was on their phones and laptops and whatnot. And suddenly, because of that internet activity, we saw a bunch of new businesses that they spurred up, right? And they essentially tried to target this new way of living that we all had to adapt to. And as part of that, that's where the venture capitalists also made a ton of money as well. I'm sure. They did finance quite a few startups. Basically just trying to tackle some of the problems that never existed before they kind of came out after the onset of COVID-19. लेकिन I think as we are trying to get back to the normal, right? अब तो mostly चीजें जो हैं they're kind of back to normal. Uh, उसमें these businesses have really suffered, right? One example that continuously keeps coming in my head is during the pandemic, काफी ज़्यादा ये grocery delivery companies जो हैं they started out. But now, if you go to any store, basically everyone is just driving to the store and buying their groceries there. And I continue to wonder how well these grocery delivery companies are doing now. Like, उन पे क्या impact है?
They're not.
I would love to. Yeah. So I think इस तरह काफी ज़्यादा businesses जो हैं they probably have suffered just because they enjoyed that limelight during the COVID time, and now that things are getting back to normal, maybe not so much. So I think my one advice would be if you are applying for a new role, if you're trying to look at a certain company, like make sure you are deeply studying the company that you are applying to or considering joining, and maybe try to see what their past performance has been like, and basically try to understand what's the runway ahead for them. And uh, sometimes it's easy to tell for certain companies, sometimes it's pretty hard. But do your level best, make a judgment call, and essentially basically do it that way. I mean, some of the things that you can try to look at is the company merely just trying to, with a small market share from the incumbent, or essentially are they trying to disrupt a certain industry? And you can basically try to tell it from the mission of the company, what it is, the type of industry it's operating in. So I think उससे काफी ज्यादा जो है आपको signals मिल सकते हैं, and just try to, I think, just given the nature of the world right now and the tech climate, I would say yes, try to offer a company which you think will be very much relevant in 5 years, uh, just to be on the safe side. I think in terms of, so you ask, okay, maybe if there isn't a significant supply of jobs right now, so what can basically people do to upskill themselves and make sure that they are, very much relevant to these positions if things do get back to normal? Uh, I think upskilling shouldn't necessarily be seen as something कि आप ऐसे टाइम पे करो जहाँ पे जॉब मार्केट थोड़ी स्लो डाउन हो रही है. I think upskilling is something that you need to constantly do. I think किसी भी प्रोफेशन में आप देख लें, you can't just sit back and say कि यार मैंने काफी सीख लिया, मैंने नहीं और पढ़ना. आई थिंक ये हम क्या कहते हैं, काफी हमारे दिमाग में ये चीज होती है कि यार बस पढ़ाई बहुत होगी एंड दैट्स अबाउट इट, अब और पढ़ाई नहीं करनी. बट this isn't पढ़ाई, right? And it's basically at the end of the day just upskilling yourself. I think some specific skills that you can maybe try to work on are things like your communication skills. Maybe try to take a course. There are a ton of, by the way, amazing courses available online, some of them for free as well, that you can essentially take and really improve on your communication skills. Uh, if you're, let's say, trying to break into a certain industry and you don't have a lot of know-how, let's say आप blockchain आपको नहीं idea उसका, maybe take a few courses on blockchain, try to understand that. If you're trying to target a certain cloud provider, then basically try to learn about those cloud solutions, try to do those certifications. These things always help at the end of the day. And honestly, even if you don't do any of this, just maybe, read any books on product management, listen to any PM related podcasts, or maybe even start blogging about product and try to get other people's perspectives on product management. I think all of these things eventually do help you become a better product manager.
Yeah. And like, for example, I cannot overstate how valuable it is to just write. Like, in all, matlab, as in, if you can write well, that's an invaluable skill.
For sure.
And and I'm not surprised because I anticipated this answer, but you didn't say कि, oh, okay, learn a certain language. You didn't say okay, acha, like for example, do a technical course. Your kind of concentration was still focused around acha, what are the fundamental things that can help you in this career, and focus in on that. So very insightful. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I think that kind of opens up a very big other question as well. Should PMs be technical or not? And I have opinions about that, whether if they
Well,
should be technical or not. But I think that's where it is. I mean, if somebody wants to go ahead and do a technical course, by all means, I think they should. But I think at the end of the day, what really will help you stand out is कि आपकी PM specific skills जो हैं, और उसमें how well do you do in those specific skills.
it is it does give you an advantage, right? I'm pretty sure that Google does not hire non-technical PMs, correct?
That's true. Yeah, you're expected to be fairly technical. Yes.
Yes. Is that in training, or is that like, just for example, if someone's a PM for 10, 15 years, are they kind of held in the same rank as, or when in evaluation, as someone who has 15 years of experience but has a technical degree? So I'm assuming it does act as a differentiator, correct?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, a big aspect of the interview process is also evaluating your technical skills. So, and you actually are expected to then know the technical aspects of your particular product as well. I think also, लिहाज से if you see, yes, that's the expectation. But I think also there's a very big expectation कि आप as a product manager जो आपकी specific skills and PM specific skills वो भी काफी अच्छी हैं. It's not just the technical aspect that will help you move forward.
Yeah, and चलो ये तो खैर गूगल या कुछ फैंग कंपनीज है, but not all require you to be technical. And like for example, yeah, I do not have a technical background, and neither am I the spokesperson of all non-technical background PMs. But I'm just saying that I've had opportunities come my way, and I still do. And the reason for I don't and I'm not just talking about it in the local environment, but generally भी अब मैं बहुत सारे लोगों को जानता हूँ who are working in a Netflix, yes, and without having a technical degree. तो ऐसा नहीं है that you can't
Yeah,
get
I
into
mean,
big companies.
for sure. And it's not that you can't even learn these things. You absolutely can learn. But I think my perspective on this is, Abdul, K, if you are technical, then obviously you can have a much more meaningful conversation with your engineering team as well. And at the end of the day, it just helps you build rapport with them.
Yeah,
So,
at the end of the day, if you can talk at the same bandwidth with them, that's honestly probably the most important like skill of
exactly, Abdul.
being technical. वरना तो and that's you
Right.
can learn from job. I have like for example you do learn that from the job, and it's really not that difficult. Like for example, there are certain things that you can equip yourself with, right? There's certain like अगर आप databases की अच्छी knowledge ले लो, अगर आप थोड़ा system architectures or web architectures की एक over मतलब as in high level understanding आपको आना शुरू हो जाए, and then when you start working and start getting experience, and it's I'm sure that it still has an advantage, but that advantage of being having a technical training starts to dilute as you get more and more experience.
For sure.
uh, yeah. That, like you said, that's an entirely different debate, और इस पे बहुत सारे हम back and forth इस पे कर सकते हैं.
Yeah,
So
okay.
I'm going to ask you two last questions because I know that you have a hard stop. So one, in talking about fads and talking about like हमने cryptos or digital currency and NFTs and NFT marketplaces and metaverse and all of these things, and we heard a lot about that, and we talked about how if you do not have a fundament, like if your fundamentals are incorrect, then you're going to struggle, right? Sooner, if not
Mm-hmm.
sooner, than later. So there is another buzzword that's in the market these days, and that's generative AI. And for like very quickly, for people that don't know generative AI, it's like basically large language या image models के through उनको एक तरीके से productize किया गया, right? Where you can use those models to be able to churn up content. You can use them for design. So, and lots of extremely extreme, like I look at some of the products, like for example, what DALI 2, and the kind of design, like the kind of output that it gives to a description, like when you give it a certain description of what you want to see in a painting or an image, or a visual output, and the result that you see from that, like I am like shocked basically. So, and it has practical use, right? Like generative AI has practical use in design, generative AI has practical use in content, for in content and copywriting. So where do you see this going? And where do you see, for example, eventually general AI? When do you see the birth of general AI? Like, or do you think there will be general AI anytime soon in our lifetimes?
Well, very interesting question, Abdul. I think, as we have seen, I think over the last several years now, AI has really taken up quite a few aspects of our lives. Uh, I think the best example in my head is basically self-driving cars. That's heavily dependent on AI. So I think at the end of the day, technology is only good if it's basically helping you solve some key problems. And I think AI definitely has helped solve some of those key problems. I think when it comes to generative AI, I think it's very new at this point. I think it would be interesting to see in specific use cases could tackle Kanegi, yeah, eventually. I haven't really. thought a lot about generative AI, to be honest. I did hear about it, but I haven't really had the time to think about, hey, यार ये किन use cases के लिए, this could be interesting. So I'd be definitely interested in knowing कि क्या क्या इसमें से निकलेगा क्या. I mean, I
I keep up with the trend so that I know when I'm going to be replaced. Just so you know, like
think
I would like a 6 to 12 months heads up here. Now you're going to be, redundant.
yeah,
So that's why I keep up with the
but
trend.
I think basically, actually, just earlier this week, I was playing with I'm sure you must have seen OpenAI का एक playground है where you can essentially go in and type in some commands and it generates everything that you basically ask it to do. So, for
Yeah.
example, if I ask it to, write a certain type of letter, वो एकदम से उसका पूरा template लिख के present कर देती है. So I think they some maybe interesting use cases generative AI can be around marketing and the marketing campaigns, basically the types of ads that you suddenly display based on the type of the user maybe and what the user's affinities are. That could be interesting. But yeah, I think it would be great to see like क्या problems जो है ये generative AI will solve on top of the non-generative AI जो अभी तक थी. So I think it would be interesting to see.
Yep. All right. So last question, and first, I promise we'll let you go. So the last question is that this is a staple question for anyone who is a guest on the podcast. So one, what is your favorite book or books? In case people get offended when I'm asked them कि एक book बताएं. So, or it doesn't need to be about product management. It doesn't need to be about startups. You could fiction की भी book बता सकते हैं, but any book or books that you'd like to recommend, and then a question that's probably more recent that you might have to kind of recall from your recent memory is about what is your favorite piece of content that you consumed in the past 1 week. And content can be anything like YouTube कोई वीडियो हो सकती है, कोई किताब हो सकती है, कोई ब्लॉग हो सकता है.
Interesting. Okay. I think पहले अगर book पे बात करें तो I think one book that I think I can easily say is one of my favorite books. It's called Never Split the Difference. It's
Oh,
written by Chris Voss, and it's an amazing book on the art of negotiation.
okay.
And I think one of the reasons I really enjoyed that book was okay, negotiation is a key aspect of being a PM, but it also helps you a lot in your personal life as well. So definitely would recommend. If you haven't read that book, please check it out.
That's
Uh,
one book I've never heard even about, which is
really?
yeah,
Okay.
and
So
and that's why I was so surprised because generally, like when people give book recommendations, oh, अच्छा हाँ ये सुनी है, it's in my to-do list, and like there is some recollection of it. Like this was the first one that I'm completely thrown off, and I'm like, okay, I will search
yeah,
it, add it to.
definitely check it out. काफी अच्छी book है, and it has a lot of great lessons in it as well. So I think so. You asked about books, right? So you said एक book का नाम ना दो. I think maybe the second one is what I maybe read just earlier this summer. It's an amazing book. It's called Welcome Home, and it's written by a Lebanese Canadian writer. Her name is Najwa Zabian. It's not related to tech, disclaimer over there, but essentially the book is about this concept of a home, a place of safety, where you can essentially embrace your vulnerabilities and, identify what your self-worth is. So basically, from a personal development standpoint, it's an amazing book that I would recommend if anyone is interested in those types of books. So do check it out.
All right,
Uh,
perfect, excellent reads, both excellent suggestions, both of them.
yeah, I think content. I'm just trying to think. I think one that has really stuck by me this week has been. I think there was someone who was very inquisitive to go into the job descriptions of Netflix की website पे, and they essentially discovered that Netflix is building a triple A PC game. So Netflix ने अपने game studio में basically they are looking for a director to essentially help build that game. So I think that's something that's really interesting just to see that Netflix is getting into the business of games. And uh, I think the what that triggered in my head was what's
Subscription games.
Netflix's
Woohoo.
play over here, right? Yeah, like what are they going after? Are they basically saying कि Netflix app में login करके you can play all of these games? Like, are they trying to increase the engagement with their application? Yeah, is that an additional revenue source? So I think it would be interesting to see how Netflix basically positions this. So yeah, if anyone wants to read more about it, a lot of blogs have basically shared their perspectives as well about Netflix entering the gaming industry. So if anyone is into gaming, if anyone is into Netflix, so that's one thing I would say, check it out.
I know Google is also pretty much going to, like, is had some kind of product that it was taking out for cloud gaming.
That's right,
Right?
Stadia. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
Stadia.
Google just announced, I think it was a few weeks back, it announced that it is shutting down Stadia
Oh
at this
no.
point. Yeah. So, typical, Google way of basically experimenting with things and then essentially pulling back if things do not make sense. But yeah, it was a cloud gaming based approach, and cloud gaming is still, I think, in its infancy. It will take a lot of time to get to its peak, but it is getting there. I mean, if you see a lot of other larger game providers like NVIDIA, GeForce Now, Amazon Luna, all of them, these are cloud gaming solutions. So definitely it seems like that will be a part of the future for sure.
All right. So I'm gonna force myself to stop here because I know that you have a hard stop, but it was incredible. Like this was, I had a lot of fun, right? As a guest, as a host, when you have so much fun and you just want to keep going, so I already know that everyone that's going to listen to it, मेरी तो खैर बकवास किसी को पसंद आए ना आए, like I'm sure that they're going to extract a lot of value from what you've said here. So thank you so much. We're going to call it a night today, and tell us how you feel about this episode. Tell us about how you loved Fahad, so that we can call him again and we can ask him to share his time with us again. And give us a like or subscribe. I hate kind of asking for that, but you got to do what you got to do. And give us feedback at wherever you listen to your podcast. Spotify, we're available in Spotify, Apple, Google, and YouTube, and anywhere where podcasts are available. See you in the next episode. Bye.
Thank you, Abdul.